the thing that I'm most excited about is life and humans. I don't think it's HR tech. I don't think it's work tech or anything like that. I think it's humanity. The concept of technology all impacting how a human shows up and is themselves. That's the stuff to me that is the spark that drives me.
We are not in the era of managing people. We are in the era of only enabling them. Going with that mindset that I'm going to manage you itself turns so many of the Gen Z away from the brands, from the organizations.
Technology is easy to change.
Yeah.
Like, we're watching it. Humans are hard to change. Whether it's people or whether it's machines, at the end of the day, what organizations are still striving for are output and outcomes.
All right, we have Jason Averbook in the house, and I can't be more excited to welcome you, Jason. I've known you for over 15 years now, and every time I interact with you, you leave me back with so many thoughts, so much of excitement. You're almost like a battery recharge for me, and I'm sure to so many in the community. So looking forward to this conversation.
So, Pushkar, so good to be here. Congratulations on your new role. Congratulations on the podcast. This is a great, great format, and so excited that you're doing it. It's been 15 years, and for whatever reason, you look 15 years younger, and I look 15 years older. But anyway, it's great to be here.
So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and every time we meet up, Jason, there's always so much because both of us care about this whole ecosystem of HR tech, work tech, digital transformation, and so much is happening at such a great pace. But before getting into all of that, we want to know a little bit more about Jason Averbook and your journey. So now, how do you see your journey? Because there's so much that you do. You're an author, you're a global thought leader, you work with hundreds of organizations, helping them transform in their journeys. You've built multiple organizations, and now you're at Mercer playing a global role, senior partner, head of HR strategy and transformation. When you look back, how does the journey feel?
Yeah, Pushkar, it's really interesting. And even when you said the stuff that you and I are excited about, it it hit me all of a sudden. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is life and humans. I don't think it's HR tech. I don't think it's work tech or anything like that. I think it's humanity. And the reason I say that is that, I give a lot of credit for my curiousness in the space to my parents. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a business professional, and I kind of grew up intrigued with technology. And my whole career has been about fusing those together. The concept of education combined with business, combined with technology. So, whether it be starting implementation of payroll systems when I was 19, which is weird, compared to most 19-year-olds, to starting companies, to teaching at universities, to writing books. I think those three things really are the things that spark my energy. The combination, like I said, of education, business, and what the puzzle that business is of humanity, capitalism, technology, et cetera, and then the concept of technology all impacting how a human shows up and is themselves. That's the stuff to me that is the spark that drives me.
Okay. No, needless to say that, anyone who hears you, Jason, or looks back at your journey, I think will only get inspired. But did you architect any of that, or it just happened by serendipity?
Pushkar, the word architect is such an interesting term because it makes it sound like there's a master plan. and there's no master plan. I mean, to me, what's really important from a career standpoint and from a, well, I'll go back to humanity standpoint, is to be able to be aware, to be able to look and watch for signals, and to always be thinking about how to stay relevant. Those three things. And if you do that, to me, the path becomes crystal clear. If you think you have an architect of a path and it's just going to fall in place like that, I don't believe that, especially in today's world. I mean, to develop a, to architect a path, and based on how fast the world changes, I just wrote something, a few weeks ago, talking about how I asked a 20-some-year-old, what she wanted for a job when she grew up,
Yeah.
grew up. And she said, it's really an old person question. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I can almost guarantee you the job I want hasn't been invented.
Wow.
Which I love that she said it. I said, I love you. And I wanted to hire her on the spot. Um, but it made me think about your question. There's not really an architecture. I think there's a framework, and I think there's a foundation. But as far as like plan by plan by plan, to me, it's relevance, it's signals, and being able to watch, learn, and understand what those mean.
Absolutely. I've been so fascinated with some of the Gen Z when they are talking about work or when they're looking at work patterns. And probably you said a job, but in my conversations, it has always been about jobs or the number of things that I'm going to be doing, not even job. The whole construct of work and jobs is going to evolve the way they are thinking about it.
It's really interesting, Pushkar, because I mean, I think I spent the end of 2024 and early 2025 in Asia
Yeah.
with my son, who was doing some work in Malaysia, and he's actually taking a very interesting path of continuing to learn, but not in traditional ways. Or I'm not going to even say traditional. I'm going to say in the culturally accepted ways that many of us are used to.
Yeah.
And he's doing two or three or four or five jobs all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but I'm watching and I'm jealous. Well, actually, I don't hate to say it. I love to say it because he's my son. But I'm jealous
Yeah.
because he's picked the things that make him passionate, and almost, well, not almost, thrown away the stuff that doesn't, and said, I want to do four or five things that I love
Yeah.
instead of 20% that I love and 80% that I don't love. And he knows there's people around him that are good at the stuff that he's not good at or that he doesn't love, and they make an amazing team. So I, I've never actually thought of it until you said it. But I'm kind of watching it play out in front of my eyes.
Absolutely. Every single day I see it when I interact with a lot of the younger folks who are coming into our organizations. What pains me is our work environments and the way we have constructed the work environment and is not aligned with what are some of the expectations. And while yes, we've done some changes, and the maturity of that is different across the world, but still there is a long way to go in terms of expectation versus where we are on and that mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, I just took a second to write down that word because it was such a poignant word you use, expectations. Because it's a two-way street when it comes to
Yeah,
expectations. There's the expectations, actually, it might be more than two-way street. There's the expectations of society
yeah,
that move at a pace that is slow. There's Most organizations move at a pace that's probably slower.
yeah,
And then there's people that Gen Z are not moving at that pace at all. So what you create is this tension of expectations misaligned. And what that does is it makes it really hard to have a great employee experience. It makes it really hard to keep people the way that organizations are used to keeping people. I mean, even when I said it, Pushkar,
Yeah.
sounds weird. Keeping people. Like it sounds like they're like being held hostage or something. And that's not the right phraseology. It's what are you doing to leverage humans while you have the opportunity to work with them to drive outcomes? But I think that concept of keeping people and they're 20 years in your company, it's probably not realistic.
Yeah, I would so agree. Keeping people, the other word I don't align with is managing people.
Yeah.
We are not in the era of managing people. We are in the era of only enabling them, because that's what we as organizations can do or leaders can do. Just going with that mindset that I'm going to manage you itself turns so many of the Gen Z away from the brands, from the organizations.
Yeah, I really like enablement, Pushkar. What I was going to say is guiding, coaching,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
believe those are constructs of enabling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really like that.
Super. So, if the way work is going to get done is going to sort of transform in itself, our workplaces need to adapt to that as well. Uh, how do you think leaders and the custodians of that, talent leaders, need to adapt as well? What do we need to change? What do we need to do to accept this change that's going to happen? That the very, like, we can keep talking about talent management, we can keep talking about the technology, but the very essence of what work is going to be is going to totally change. Then what are we talking about?
Yeah, and Pushkar, that's what gives me energy, what you just said, is, I mean, the concept of trans means change.
Yeah.
And why I like transformation just as a general category, whether I am working with clients, whether I'm working within our own organization, or whether I'm teaching, is because what it allows me to do is it allows me to think about change in what you said. So, when you said how are organizations going to change, I think the first thing that they need to do is accept the fact that they're going to change.
Yeah.
I mean, if that makes any sense. I mean, we go through change and we buy technology and we go through leadership programs and things like that, and we see them as band-aids to a momentary situation. We see them as band-aids to a momentary situation, and it's a new program. It's a new design. It's a new way of being, thinking, working, acting, feeling, treating people, enabling, all of those things. It's not just a project. And you don't just hire a consulting firm to do it and then they leave and then you go back to the way it was. And I do think, Pushkar, it is the thing that is the hardest thing to change. Technology is easy to change.
Yeah.
Like we're watching it. Humans are hard to change. And that's why I love your framing of this podcast around humans. Because I think we put too much weight on the tech. We put too much weight on someone else to change work for us instead of us as humans changing. And if we change our mindsets, it will change work.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Jason. And the degree at which this change is happening, it's so fast. Probably previously when we've had such times when there was a challenge, be it the industrial revolution or the dot-com change, the internet, the smartphone economy, organizations still got about 8 to 10 years to change, adapt, sometimes even more. This time things are changing in 12 months, 18 months. You don't have that kind of time available. More and more business models are getting disrupted. Organizations that have been long standing have been challenged by some of the small organizations and startups who are saying that, what, we don't fear that anymore, we're going to challenge the core fundamentals. And when you have an environment like that, the whole approach towards digital tech transformation, people enablement takes a different angle altogether, as per me.
Yeah, Pushkar, there's two O words I like to think about, and it's outcomes and output, or I probably should say output and outcomes. And one of the things that's fascinating about what you just said and then what we're seeing is that whether it's people or whether it's machines, at the end of the day, what organizations are still striving for are output and outcomes. Output and outcomes. I mean, I'm making it sound very simple, and it's not that
Yeah.
simple, but that's what it is. It's how many podcasts am I putting out? How many conferences am I putting on? How many customers am I talking to? How many support calls am I taking? Are customers, the outcome, happy? And do they feel like they're working with a good organization? And there's more than one way to do that. You can do it with humans. You can do it with robots. That's way, I didn't mean robots as like, I mean, you could call it
Physical
whatever you want
robots.
to, but AI or bots, or you could think about how do you use those two together to drive the right blend to get optimal outputs and outcomes. And I truly believe, Pushkar, that any leader who's not thinking about that today is in extreme danger. And that is not Jason Averbook trying to like be over reactive or things like that. But we are watching organizations truly like lose 50% of their revenue in a year. Like that's not heard of in the past. And it's happening because they're not transforming, they're not shifting the way they need to because of speed. And the reason that they can't move faster is because of inertia and change. They're used to the status quo. And yourself as a CEO, I think it's the number one thing that you have to be watching for.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And
your organization did a brilliant job of taking a situation like COVID and working through it. Now, was it easy? No, 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 not easy at all. Like terrible decisions, hard decisions. You'd cry, you'd laugh, you'd say, "Is this right?" You'd stay up. I remember you and I having conversations.
yeah,
Like you'd
yeah.
say, "I was up all night thinking about this," and we should be up all night thinking about this because this is bigger than that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But you know what they say, since you brought up the COVID time and how we had to adapt, I pay a lot of credit to doing things. It's like, you go to the gym in the winters if you want to have a good, cool summer body. Like, the cool summer bodies of summer are crafted in cold winters, as they say in the gym.
Now
2000.
I understand. Now I understand why you look so young. You've been working on your summer body.
I wish. But 2017, Jason, is when we had our first virtual conference, and a lot of people were like, why would you want to do a virtual conference on a platform getting about close to 10,000 people? Because physical world was perfectly doing fine. Why would you need that kind of a medium? And we were like, let's experiment. If the medium is available, we will experiment. We don't know when we would need to use this medium, but if we are able to drive a community on a platform, we should do it. So let's say when COVID hit, we had done enough mistakes to know how digital and virtual does not work, so that we could put it to use and make it work. So I think it's a lot of hard work that organizations need to do in the present and explore all the experimentation opportunities to be ready for what could potentially come in the future.
Yeah, it's a really great point, Pushkar. I mean, it's that concept of preparation and trying new things, not being afraid to fail, being really agile in your mindset and your actions around that. That you did in 2017 that made it much simpler yeah, I hate to say it like that, but much easier, if there is such a thing,
Yeah,
to deal with in 2020. But that experimentation or that almost playfulness
yeah,
is not a it's not a built-in DNA of organizations. Organizations are used to being I, calculator companies.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, hey, if this doesn't make sense for this month, why are we doing it? And I think that we're so inwardly focused on results at our period of time, our one day, our
yeah,
1 week, our 1 month, that what we don't realize is that when our child turns 20, the effort we put in. I know this isn't as cool as your summer body thing, but as our kids get older,
yeah,
wow, all that work we did to ground them. I mean, I know you have a young child. All that work you're doing to educate and to give them a solid foundation and a solid set of beliefs, that pays off.
yeah,
You have to invest in both the now and the next.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that that is a really key point that you just made about 2017.
Absolutely. And to your point on companies being run on calculators, so the top line is judged on calculators. What breaks my heart is the workforce is managed on an Excel sheet, and it's about the rows. The day you start thinking that people are not Excel rows is where I feel the real change would happen or could happen.
Yeah, I love that. God, I love talking to you. Every time I talk to you, I don't know how you're a wizard at verbalizing, but yeah, I love that thought because it hits so close to home that I mean, how many? I mean, I better not talk too much about my current day roles, but when you all of a sudden see a list of 500 people and
Yeah,
it's a spreadsheet, like you said, um, it loses all context or color or texture of what makes up that person. Um, and yeah, I mean, yeah, you said it. I'm not doing a good job of rephrasing what you said. You said it beautifully, and you're exactly right. I mean, that mindset and those actions have to adjust, and it's not. And I guess I'll just add. You used calculator and you used Excel.
yeah,
You know, all of a sudden, a new Excel is not going to change that. It's not the technology that's going to change that. It's us that's going to change that when we start to actually look at the workforce as truly the humans that they are and not the asset or the capital that we call them.
yeah, yeah. And you know what concerns me, Jason, is that yes, there is AI and Gen AI, and now we're talking about agentic, and we'll come to that. But there's a lot of conversation that I'm hearing on, oh, as talent leaders, we need to also get used to sort of deboarding some of our workforce, sort of getting them off the organizations. How do we manage mass layoffs, and what is going to change? Almost this kind of conversations have started to happen in the CEO circuits that I am part of, and even in some of the CHROs. I'm like, why can't we have conversations around how do I upskill this talent and people that I have? So the moment you put an Excel sheet filter, you start thinking about how do I deboard them. The moment you put a human centric lens, you start thinking about how do I upskill them, how do I get them ready for the future business model or the workforce that I have in mind. And I think that shift is so important for leaders, organizations, talent leaders to have in this challenging times that is ahead of us.
Yeah, I agree. And if you watch, for example, what's going on in U.S. politics, which is where I live, what you're watching is a perfect example of um, maybe in certain cases the right actions being taken, but the wrong message and the wrong delivery. So, all of us, I mean, none of us that pay taxes want our money to be wasted. And our definition of waste is not necessarily one definition of waste. And that's one of the things that makes humans beautiful, is that people have different points of view. But if the organizational message or the employee value proposition, back to what we're talking about here, better not talk about politics too much, but the view, what we're talking about here is, if the message is, we're going to build into our organizational DNA and frameworks that we're going to upskill, reskill, and constantly be evolving. You know, maybe upskill and reskill aren't even the right terms, because it sounds like, oh, there's money, more money, more money for learning, more money, you know what I mean, more money for training. Maybe that's not even the right, I mean, that's what we call it from an HR standpoint, but maybe it's just evolution. Like,
Yeah.
we need the mindset of evolving. And if we have the mindset of evolving, then we build into our budget and we build into our plans, just like when we're raising kids, that's part of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, something changed, time to reskill. Oh, thank goodness we're done. Oh, something changed, time to reskill. Oh, thank goodness we're done. Like, I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true on that thought process.
Do you know
But
what I mean? Like, there, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Upskill, reskill, upskill, reskill, upskill, reskill, upskill, reskill. Like, yeah, get it. But when that also becomes a line item, Pushkar,
I agree.
just
I
like the
agree.
people. And when all
Yeah.
of a sudden it becomes a line item, it's the easiest thing to slash, right? And then what happens? You fall behind.
Yeah, yeah. How would you imagine it, Jason? So let's just say that we want to address this, and we want a message going out to all the talent leaders, and honestly, a lot of founders and CEOs who might be seeing this as well. There's been a huge surge of founders and talent leaders who are not necessarily coming from the HR world, consuming People Matters content, and I want a message to go out to them. How would you look at it?
I mean, I think, Pushkar, that, and by the way, whenever I do things like this and I say I think, people are like, you don't know? And I said, no, I don't know. And they're like, you're supposed to be an expert. And I'm like, we're talking about uncharted territory
Yeah.
here. And, you know, and I know that we've been talking about Workforce 2020 ever since Y2K, and I get all of that stuff. So we've probably had time. But until it's here, it's really hard to act. I think the concepts of being fluid and the concepts of how work flows are two things that we really need to pay attention to. Is the fluidity of the workforce to come and go, to be able to work on programs and projects. And guess what? It might be okay if they leave. We don't have to have a going away part. I mean, I'm all for fun, but
Yeah.
like it's right now we get sad when someone leaves. And like, the question is, should you be happy? Like, it's sad that that person left, but maybe they're on to something else that doesn't match to us, or maybe they have different career aspirations, or we have something that we need to do that's not them. Like, how do we blend that in a way where we're thinking about that concept of fluidity and acceptance of fluidity, and at the same time realizing that I maybe and probably don't need full-time equivalencies to do one thing.
Yeah.
That a job going forward is not going to be 40 hours, or goodness knows we all work more than that per week. But, that it's not going to be, I mean, I have an output or an outcome. And what are the ingredients of that outcome? Might be a fifth of this, a fourth of this, a third of this. So I think that, I mean, you've heard me say this before, instead of counting people, how do we make people count?
Yeah.
And how do we really understand what the right special secret ingredient is to deliver the outcome and outputs that we're striving for? I think one of the biggest things, Pushkar, that is troubling is some people don't even know what those outputs and outcomes are.
Wow.
Like, you know what I mean? If we're not all rowing in the same direction,
Yeah.
or as a leader, if you as a leader, or I'm going to use your term, enabler or empowerer, are not actually communicating what those outcomes, those desired, excuse me,
Yeah.
outputs and outcomes are, then what am I, how do I even know if I'm going in the right direction as a human? And as choice becomes more and more available to people, A, and B, as we think about how we blend humans and machines together, which I know we're going to get to, eh, that concept of fluidity and flow are just crucial to me. So that's when you ask me how I would do it, that is not a recipe, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Those are ingredients.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact recipe, but I know that it can't be static. And I know that it can't be based on old school management principles that many organizations are still working off of.
But I'm going to quickly now move because I'm cognizant of time as well, Jason, towards the whole aspect of AI. And I know a lot of work you've been doing in that space and
Never heard of it.
never heard of it. Okay, very good.
AI? What's AI? Just kidding.
So, 2023, there was this article that you had authored, which was around AI being like another shiny thing that's coming up. Of course, a lot of things have changed post that, and then you've come around or on the whole AI plus human part of things, and we discussed a lot in Singapore when we met. Now with the whole agentic part of things hitting us, 2025 is probably now coined as the year of agentic. And I'm hearing of concepts like single person founded companies and having 100 agents doing $1 billion. And we could actually see some of those examples in 2025 itself. So we're getting into that era. What's your view? What's going to change? How will work change? How will the market change? And what happens in our world of people and work?
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of stuff all in one statement, Pushkar. But so just really quickly, I have always been a believer in the impact technology can have on work. Okay. What I'm not a believer in is that technology alone can change work. And when I said technology, I didn't say technology can't change work. I said technology alone can't change
Yeah.
work. And the reason that I authored that back in 2023, and I still say the same thing today, is that we tend to get caught up with the technology more
Yeah.
than we tend to get caught up with the concept of how do we as humans adjust to the technology. So when I talk about shiny object syndrome, the shiny object is the technology. And what we do is we focus on the shiny object and we don't focus on the people that have to live with the object. Okay? So where I really see us at today
Yeah.
is a space where there is no one, I don't believe, in our industry, and if there is, God bless them, that predicted the speed and the disruptive nature of AI on work.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I would say, and this is not meant to be demeaning, 95% of the people still don't understand how big it is. They don't they're still using ChatGPT or Claude, or they're caught up in which model's better, or hey, this one's doing has an IQ of 120, this one has an IQ of 115. Like when I watch people do that, I am literally like, you're arguing over 5 points of IQ, which by the way are almost all smarter than you. Like that's the wrong discussion. The discussion needs to be around how will I use this once in a lifetime innovation moment to change work. That's the question. And how do I bring the people who are going to be necessary? Yes, I said it, necessary, along with me to do that. Like that's the moment that we're in. We let like the moment of I don't know if AI is going to really change stuff. That's it's over.
Yeah,
The moment where it's risky, we better not do it. It's over. It's over. That doesn't mean everyone's over it, but that shouldn't be the discussion. The discussion has to be around back to what I said earlier about outcomes and outputs. What is the best way for me based on my company, my educational institution, my nonprofit, whatever it is, what for me to achieve my goals today and then seeing signals, what is the best way for me to work? And you've heard me say this before. I take a really, by the way, I actually used this at one of your conferences for the first time after talking with one of your attendees for the first time at a People Matters conference where I said, there's hands work, there's heads work, and there's hearts work. I'll never forget
yeah,
talking to a woman in a bar in Singapore after one of your events about this, and that's where I thought of that term. And we're still in the same spot. And like a lot of this hands work that is repeatable, auditable, and documented should be done by a machine
yeah,
so that I can spend time as a human doing stuff like this.
yeah,
Like truly, I mean, this is a perfect example. If I was too busy answering emails or too busy doing X, Y, Z, I would not be able to have these types of enriching conversations that move the world
yeah,
forward.
yeah,
And that's what we need to save our human energy for and leverage the machine energy for the stuff that I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's stuff that machines are better at than us. Like, yes, I said it, swallow hard. Yes, machines are better than us at some things, right? Like, they don't get moody,
yeah,
they don't have kids to deal with. They can deal with lots of repetitive work and not be like, oh, this is driving me crazy. You know what I mean? Like they're better at that stuff. So cool. Let them win that. And let's us win what humans are great at, which is showing love, showing empathy, showing audacity towards where we're all headed.
100%. I couldn't agree more, Jason. And uh, the way we are approaching this, I still feel there is so much that we need to achieve as humans, and I don't think probably some part of that is more AI taking over on the transactional part, but a lot of those changes in the jobs are going to happen with a human using AI impacting other humans' job or the way of working, than actually AI doing that entire piece.
Yeah,
So
no. And that's where that I mean, you've heard me talk about this for years and I mean, it's one of the only ways I like stay energetic about this is the concept of a beginner's mindset.
yeah,
Is that you have to have a beginner's mindset with all of this stuff. Otherwise, like you have to accept the fact that you probably don't know 75% of what you need to know in order to do what you need to do going forward, which basically is hard for humans to say.
yeah,
But based on the way the world of work is changing, at least 75% of what
yeah,
I need to know in 5 years, I don't know today.
yeah,
I guarantee it. I guarantee that. And that being said, what can I what can I bring that I can guarantee? The right mindset, the right culture, the right outlook, the right empowerment, like you said, or enablement. That's what I can bring, because the skill stuff is just going to keep changing. And Pushkar, this goes way back to education systems, and I don't. That is, we're not going to have time.
yeah. That's like half a day of
It truly
conversation.
is. But I mean, even the fact we're teaching kids to memorize stuff, or we're, yeah, I mean, is that, I mean, I don't know if that's right. I mean, I'm not the one to judge that, but is it right? And
Yeah.
a beginner's mindset questions that.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. The only word, Jason, I would add in that series would be authenticity. Um,
that's a
I
great
think,
word. It's a great
yeah,
word.
I think the only way we are going to be able to deal with a lot of these things and have that mindset is just show authentic. Just every day, every morning, just show being authentic. That's who I am. That's where I am, and I don't know answers to so many things that the world is asking. It's okay. We'll get there. We'll become the answer.
Yeah, Pushkar, that's a great ad, and it does bother me. I mean, not where it keeps me up at night, but it does bother me when you start hearing people say, "In 5 years, this is the way it's going to be," and with 100% certainty, because I think that's all we're trying to do right now is read signals and make the best decisions about these outcomes that we're trying to achieve as possible. And authenticity is so important. You're so right. Authenticity is so important because you're not going to get it right. I guarantee you're not going to get it right. So you have to be able to accept that and learn from it. And that shows up from day one as a leader.
Absolutely. I think Amazon has it, right? Every day is day one. That mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's always a challenge to me when people say a company has it,
Yeah.
because I think it's important to have a company outcome like that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I really think, and I heard something that your organization, People Matters, put out recently about the importance of middle managers
Yes.
and line managers. I mean, the line managers and the people that you report to are the people that you listen to more on a day-to-day basis. So I agree with Amazon, and what I think is so important about what you said is that as long as Amazon is instilling that same mindset into their managers, so that when I have my one-on-ones with you, which are hopefully more than once a year, sorry, that was a little bit of a dig, but um, it should be every time. How do
Yeah.
we think different? How do we accept the fact that I might be wrong, instead of what do you want me to do today, boss? What do you want me to do today, boss? What do you want me to do today, boss? That's not going to work.
Yeah, no, whole construct is changing, evolving, and I want to touch on the HR tech side of the ecosystem as well, probably the vendor side of the ecosystem. Uh, do you feel that our tech providers somewhere lost a bit of step because everyone was investing so heavily on the most sexy looking platforms and having the best experience and trying to mimic what happens in CX. Let's sort of build that into our technology solutions, but with now Gen AI coming into play and agents coming into play, the workforce is probably not even going to log into those platforms. What essentially is going to happen is they're going to consume that in the moment. Either that's going to happen through WhatsApp or Slack or Teams or Zoom, whichever be the way of communication, but that's where I'm going to consume. So then all the tech that has been built in the last 5 to 8 years or before then has to completely change because there is a box behind Teams that's going to be working. But does it matter how sexy the box looks, or what matters is am I getting the output or input in the mode of communication I want?
Wow. We could just spend a long time on this topic. So I'm going to go back to a word you used earlier called expectations. And I truly believe that the expectations of the buying community of HR technology were off, and in many cases still are off. When I say off, not like on off, but weren't set correctly, and they weren't oftentimes they weren't set correctly because they listened to the vendor instead of listening to the industry. So vendors, and I'm not going to pick on any vendors,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
vendors very much for the last 10 plus years. It's been a battle for the eyeballs. And when I say battle for the eyeballs, it's like I want them in my software. I want them in my user interface. I want them using my tool. And I really think that if there was a misstep, if there was a misstep, to me, it's about data. And that we overemphasized as an industry the user interface and underemphasized the impact of data. And I don't mean to make that overly simplistic because I could go into a lot more detail. But I mean, really quickly, when you start to look at your example of, and by the way, you're exactly right. People aren't going to be using the user interfaces of these products. Like, it makes no sense. It makes zero sense. Um, and that's hard. That's a really hard thing for people to hear when they made their decision on a piece of software based on that interface. But what we're seeing is that data trumps interface, the user interface, every day. And what's going to happen, and it's already happening, is those organizations with the best data will be the ones that move to these new autonomous worlds in a much faster, easier, simpler way than those organizations that have spent all of their time on the interface and not enough time thinking about their data. I think we've spent too much time lifting and shifting from one system to another system to another
Yeah.
system to another system to another system, looking for a better interface instead of realizing that my name is right. It was right in the mainframe. Like, why do I keep moving systems to store name instead of actually thinking about how do I actually make sure my data is right? And I think that's if there was a misstep, and I don't think that vendors misstepped. I
Okay.
think that the industry misstepped based on getting caught up with what was going on in the consumer world and not having visibility, which none of us did. I'm by the way, me too. Uh, uh, Not having visibility into the impact of what agentic AI was going to be able to do and the power of inference and the power of those models. I don't think it was possible. So I don't want to throw light or throw dirt on a vendor. I want to think about how do we move forward now based on what we have. And that's changing our priorities and changing our spending and making sure that it's aligned with where the world is today.
But there's going to be a lot of bloodbath while this happens, Jason. I'll tell you for the reason. Why would someone pay $20 per month per user when in an open source that same thing is available for 50 cents? And it just plugs into your WhatsApp or the medium of communication. Does the same job. That's the kind of change that we are talking about here, without even realizing that the amount of investments that have gone in. A lot of it is VC and PE money, so it's not cheap money. It's not something that is available. It's okay. You can down the drain. Let's move forward. There's a lot of change that's going to hit us, and a lot of them need to move very, very fast in a very different angle, is the way I look at it.
I don't even know how to respond to your to that. So you used the term bloodbath, and maybe that was just to provoke some sort of
Yeah.
emotion from me. Um, Anytime there's change, there's change. There's change in vendors, there's change in strategy, there's change in spend, there's change in pricing models, there's change in how these vendors go to market.
Yeah.
And once again, being old and not having a summer body like you, like I've lived through it multiple times.
Yeah.
So yes, it's going to change, and a lot of the vendors that we know today won't be there tomorrow. And that's not the end of the world. That's what keeps us moving forward. But I will say what I what I try to advise clients on and vendors for this point is you have to move with speed, A, and B, you have to move with intention. You're not going to be great at everything. And I think that's probably, Pushkar, another thing that if there was a misstep, we could say we too many people tried to be too good at everything
Yeah.
and in return ended up having lowest common denominator capability that kept everyone focused on silos and those that were just great at one or two things. At the end of the day, I'm going to take a little bit of a different view than you for 1 second. All of these vendors that tried to do everything in one platform, I think were actually ahead of us because they got it right when it came to getting all of your data in one spot. What we as buyers focused on was a little feature here and there. One in our learning system, one in our recruiting system, one in our performance system, where we said, no way can we use that system. We need our own system because we're a snowflake and we're unique and it's never going to work for us. You're laughing, but you know it's true, right? Like at the end of the day, we probably created this mess or this opportunity. I don't like to be negative,
Yeah.
ourselves. And now our job to go forward is to think about it with a data first approach, which is an AI first approach. Same thing. A data first approach and saying what's most important is the data that we have in order to be able to use it to drive experience, outcome, outputs, decisions, et cetera, et cetera.
What has worked for us, and we've been using this term people and work. Uh, for us, it's not the HR industry or HR tech or some of these words, and we use some of these very interchangeably. But what we've been centering as people matters is the ecosystem of people and work, because people would evolve, the way work happens will evolve, both of them would stay, that's not changing, but I think the construct is around that is what we've been sort of
I
using
like
and
it.
driving.
I really do like it, and I think that that what it gives you is it gives you space,
Yeah.
which I think you really need space today. Like people, I mean, that gives you space to talk about humanity all
Yeah.
the way down to an individual's
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
Work gives you the opportunity to talk about things from transactional tactical work to, hey, how does it tie back to strategy? So I really like that. I mean, you hear people talk about people and culture as well. You know, I think work design is going to be really important going forward. Not saying culture is not,
Yeah.
but I think work. I know it's a weird word, but work is a really important word to keep in mind going forward.
You said interestingly, the 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 work part of it, it's gonna evolve, it's gonna change. What do you anticipate? If you were to put a little bit of telescope on your eyes, what do you see? What will evolve?
For in what period of time? That I was literally in the United States. Sorry, I had this conversation last night. I was about to make it relevant, but I'm sure from a podcast standpoint, who knows when this is airing. But I was in a conversation last night, and someone asked me the same question at a party, and I said, "In what period of time?" Because what I see in 10 years is completely different than what I see in 5 years, which is completely different than what I see in 15 years.
Okay, let's give it a shot. 3 years, 5 years, 10.
So in 3 years, I think we're all going to be waking up in 2028
Yeah.
in a world where 50% of our jobs as we know them today are going to be automated. And that while I'm waking up in that world of 2028, I have, in the most part, not done anything to redesign work. And I have a huge issue of surplus productivity and surplus people. I think as we move beyond that, let's say to 2030, I then start to right size. Or I start to say, what kinds of people do I need? What kind of jobs do I want them doing? And how do I really start to design work knowing that my AI agents aren't a foreign body? They're not bad. They're not evil. They're not trustworthy. They're just part of my platforms that I have. They're not employees.
Yeah.
Don't no one please don't like all of the people calling AI employees, like they're not employees, they're just part of my operating system. And what I have is I'm going to have a surplus of people that are doing the work that the machines are doing. So those organizations that are ahead, by the way, I'm not going any further than that. Those organizations that are going ahead, that will be ahead, are thinking about that today. Those organizations that are behind or will be behind are going to wake up in 2027 or 2028 and realize, how did this happen? And you're going to say, and hopefully you and I are talking like this, you're going to say, what was the misstep?
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you the misstep was we started thinking about work design too late.
Interesting. Very, very, very
Now, if
interesting.
I go beyond 5 years, just really quickly, we're going to
Yeah.
see fundamental changes back to our educational models in having people focused on not getting general knowledge degrees, but specialized degrees based on what they want to do, a doctor, a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. And people are going to say that already happens. It doesn't happen. They get general degrees with a little specialization. What I'm going to need going forward is big specialization because the rest of it is going to be available to me as a knowledge source.
Yeah. Interesting. That gets me, Jason, and I know we've way short over time, but to this whole aspect of how's the role of CHRO going to change or evolve? How do you see this function evolving? How do we need to adapt? What capabilities you feel we need to be aligning ourselves with? Would love to hear your thought.
I mean, it's going to be really simple, Pushkar. Like, it's not going to be a long answer. I'm going to go back to basics of supply chain.
Okay.
What am I making? What do I need? What do I have to make it? And how do I be successful? Just like we think about the supply chain, I'm going to say, what's the people chain? And the people chain is going to be, what do I need in order to execute? Or maybe not even the people chain. What's the resource chain? Including, quote unquote, machines
Yeah.
to be able to do this. So when we think about the three phases of HR, we talk about, the concept of making people counting people backwards, or how do we think about human machine teaming to drive outputs? And to me, I think just like the person that was ahead of the supply chain or head of procurement is responsible for taking my strategy and thinking about the resources I need, that's what I believe the role of HR is going to either shift to, or the role of HR goes away.
Does it evolve into something?
Well, it evolves into a output outcome focused function,
Okay.
or it goes away.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Interestingly, Jensen was talking about, having the CIO being almost like an HR function for all the agents that are going to be there and the bots. And then here we are talking about the complete change of the role of the CHRO as well. So interesting times we are in.
Oh, I think it's a fascinating time, but I think it's the right time. And I think it's the right change to be needed. And it's the right change. It's going to be the kick that. So there's, how there's things that, like COVID drove digitization.
Yeah.
AI is going to drive the evolution of HR to finally get us out of some of the archaic processes that we've had, which have been back from the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I would say be there, action it, or go extinct. So
Yep.
really, those are the choices.
Yep. I agree.
Super. Lovely, lovely to have this chat. And, every single time, Jason, you and I have spoken, we've always overshot time, but love your energy, love your excitement, love your passion with which you show up every single time. And, there's so much that all of us in the community can learn from you and imbibe as part of change in everything that we do as individuals and as organizations.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that, Pushkar, and the feeling's mutual. I think that the key for me is that we learn together, because I think that the amount of change we're going to deal with going forward, is going to be exponential compared to what we've seen in the past 10 years. And I think if we aren't doing it together, I mean, there's not one person that has the answer.
Super,
Thank
lovely.
you so
So,
much. Great to be with you.
signing off, Jason Averbook, and of the long titles that he has, Jason Averbook, the human for you in our community. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jason.
Pushkar. Thank you so much.